Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today we go in depth. In depth is where we go back in time and take a look at what built the person, their trials and tribulations, heartbreak, joy, and what makes them tick as an entrepreneur. Each person gets their own dedicated intro as we celebrate some of their contributions to our community and look at some of the landmarks of their career. He's one of the most smartest people I know. He's an innovator when it comes to ranking on Amazon. He's a published author. He is the president of Six Leaf, formerly known as Zomblast. His blog posts on Amazon trends are legendary. He can still body pop with the best of them. So raise a glass, raise your hands, raise the roof. Put your headphones on, put your phone away. Let the family know you'll be back soon as we go in depth with Anthony Alabama Lee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. As this is in depth, we know we get straight into things. So talk to me about what your parents instilled in you as a child.
Wow. Parents instilled in me as a child. So it's interesting because my mother and father were very, very different. My father has always been an entrepreneur. So although growing up, he was a salesperson, but he instilled in me that education and hard work were the most important things, not necessarily formal schooling, but education, and not necessarily like grind work, but working your butt off to get somewhere. My mother had a similar work ethic, but she wasn't as entrepreneurial. So she instilled in me some of like the more, always be on time, dress professionally, address people professionally. So she was very like structured in that way. So that I guess that's what they instilled in me individually.
Cool. So you got a lot of healthy habits that was instilled in you there. Take me back to your earliest entrepreneurial memory or like your first job.
Okay. Well, my earliest entrepreneurial memory, I was a late bloomer.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely I wasn't like the lemonade stand kid. My earliest entrepreneurial memory probably didn't happen until I was in my early 20s, which was many years after my first job, which was at a fast food chicken joint when I was like 14.
Right. And what was that? Is it like Chick-fil-A or?
I was called Kenny Rogers Roasters, and it was it was fast food rotisserie chicken, and I was the guy that impaled the chickens onto the spit for the rotisserie.
So, as in Kenny Rogers is in the country and western singer, is that right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Brilliant. That is genius. Talk me about the uniforms and stuff you had to wear there, or was there not any?
Yeah, no, it was just black slacks and a t-shirt. The problem that I had though, and the reason why ultimately I had to quit was because my position involved me marinating the chicken in this, almost toxic brew that got all over my clothes. And despite my mother washing many, many loads of my clothing, it had a stench that carried. I had a different uniform for every day of the week, and still this stench lived in each one of them until my mother was like, "Look, I really can't handle this anymore. Can we get another job?"
I'd done a similar thing. I lasted a week at a fish slicing factory. I would get on the bus on like public transport and leave work, and I would stink. And I'd get home and I'd sit in this bath, stinking of salmon all day. I could smell it. It was just all in my skin, my clothes. I just could not get rid of it. I lasted about 5 days, and after I got to the Sunday, I just put my notice in. I just said, I can't go back there, not with that. So keep telling me about this place. I'm liking this. So you were skewing the chicken. You were stinking when you come home. I mean, what was it like? Black tar? What was that kind of stuff that was on top of the chicken? What it was marinated in?
It was this herb stuff that I had to put in these giant trash cans, and fill with water. But it was just, I don't know, it was so strong. And, whenever it's spread thinly over the chicken and cooked, it tastes great. But when it's in concentrate all over your shoes, it smells awful. Yeah.
Cool. Right. So switching things up a little bit. Well, you mentioned education earlier. What's your take on education, school? Is it important, waste of time? Were you a dropout or, very pro school, had loads of debt from student loans and stuff like that?
Actually, I didn't go to college. I'm a dropout. I am not really big on. I'm not really big on the school structure. I think education is important. I think acquiring skills is important, very important. Gosh, I try to do that as often as possible, but I don't necessarily think that the traditional schooling system is going to give you those skills. I feel it's actually kind of silly how a lot of businesses operate these days, where they look to see if you have this degree. I know plenty of people that have a degree that can't, they can't tell their elbow from their butthole. And I know plenty of people who never got a degree, and they're brilliant. I mean, they're brilliant. They know how to do a billion different things. And so I think it's all about skill acquisition and education, focal education based on particular interests or important information, not necessarily schooling.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, going back to what you're saying there, I mean, I've interviewed hundreds of people over the years for different positions and stuff, and you get some really impressive CVs, and then the people would turn up and sit down in front of you, and you're just like, I just can't put to words some people. You're very disappointed. I think you can tell by when someone walks into a room, their aura, the way that they carry themselves, you got the CV, you can pick off that. But I've seen so many people like with incredible CVs, very well educated, but they were like wet lettuce leaves. They were useless, about as useful as a chocolate ashtray. No disrespect, but I think that's the problem, isn't it? Is that when you create a culture where trying to get people, and I feel sorry for them, is that you've got to go out there to try and get the best education possible in order to get the best job to go and work for someone else. And I think that's a shame. Yeah. I want it in the DNA as a kid, coming through now, is that you will promote problem solving and work for yourself. We're in the mind economy now. We're in a different world, aren't we? So, I mean, I'm not a bright guy. I don't have any qualifications. I left school barely read and write. But like yourself, you find means and way, don't you? Acquire skills along the way for what you need. Do you see what I mean?
Exactly.
There's a lot of people that have got great educations, but they're not what I call rainmakers that make a difference. So you have all this education, but I know people who are in jobs maybe 100, 150 grand a year, but it's like if you would give them a business to run, they wouldn't be able to do it because they're used to like a big corporate structure and environment. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of meetings and lots of red tape, and they're good at navigating those waters. But give them a small business to run and give them 100 hats to wear. They just can't
creative problem solving.
Exactly,
which is an essential skill for entrepreneurship.
Exactly. So talk to me about your first meaningful job. I know you used to like the chicken shack with smelly shoes, but what else did you do that was more meaningful that you enjoyed in terms of your early jobs?
I had so many, I moved around a lot. There wasn't really, I don't think I ever did very meaningful work in the workforce, but I learned a lot of valuable skills in the restaurant business. I was a waiter and bartender for many years.
Yeah.
And that taught me a lot of what I use to this day. As an introvert, I'm still able to, I'm not kidding. When I was in my mid-20s, I absolutely 100% loathed the idea of networking. I thought networking was a sham. You're just trying to, use people, and it was awful. And I was so awkward, and I never wanted to talk or meet anybody. And when I did try, it was always like I was the first one to put out a sales pitch. And there was a point in time when, friends wouldn't even talk to me because it was just like, it's so difficult for me to separate relationships and networking. And working in the restaurants made me kind of come out of my shell and then realize the importance of relationships. And
is that where you develop social skills?
Basically, yeah. Because you're kind of forced to, at that point, you have to either do it or don't make any money. And I had a kid at a pretty young age, so I needed to make that work.
Yeah. No, because it's interesting, like where you are now and the industry and stuff that you're in, etc. And like I mentioned earlier, you're one of the smartest guys that I know. I turn to you for stuff. I remember seeing your very first few blog posts, or what I'd see of them. It was in Will Cherland's private mastermind group. And I used to read these epic blogs back in 2015, and they just absolutely blew my mind. That was like that stage of learning stuff yourself and then someone coming along and literally dropping science, and you're reading these and you're just like, wow. And I think I've still got a folder on my desktop, on my computer, where I've cut and pasted those posts and saved them. And I religiously went through them for those different techniques and trying those things. That was my early schooling of someone in the industry that like really did know stuff, like beyond Will. Obviously, when you speak to Will back then, when I first met him, he was like a machine gun. He's like spills out all this information. So what I'm interested in is that journey from, you said you spent many years doing bartending and those not non-career jobs, but those jobs like that, that for you maybe your fillers until something came along that you wanted to be really into. So
yeah,
how did that happen? I mean, you got into Amazon what year?
2014, end of 2014.
Yeah, so the gold rush period. I was in at 215. A lot of people were in the 214, 15 period, wasn't it? That's when a lot of people came in. But what was, we go from the chicken chat, the bars and stuff. Talk me through that whole process of how you then landed at Amazon, because that's a big jump. Do you know what I mean? I've done some industry changes. I interviewed Lee Rand. He's done some industry changes. I've done 2 or 3 switches, but you were in the service industry there. So talk me through that process.
So everything changed when I was 19 and my oldest daughter was born. So that was like life come at you real hard. Gotta figure this out because I have a family now. And then I joined the military. I didn't go active duty though. I just joined the National Guard, which is where I went to training, and then afterwards would one weekend out of the month would dress up and play soldier. And while I was in training, right, so I joined this because a friend of mine had, and he told me when you get out of training, you'll have like $4 or $5 grand sitting in your bank account. And I was thinking, well, I need this. I have a child now. While I was in training, I met this guy, and he was kind of weird. He's like a weird older hippie dude, but he kept talking about his future plans, and he had all these future plans of like getting into real estate investment. And anyway, it blew my mind. That was the light switch. That was the moment that the entrepreneurial bug was planted in my head, because I had never even thought in those terms before. Because at that point, my dad was still a salesman. I knew that if you sold stuff, which I absolutely hated the idea of ever doing, you could make some money, but whatever. That's not me. It never even occurred to me to own my own business until this guy started rambling about it all the time. And it was like an earworm. It just got in my ear, and then it grew. So as soon as I get out, me and my wife, my now ex-wife, mother of my oldest daughter, moved to Atlanta, Georgia, big city, from, tiny town in Alabama to Atlanta, Georgia. And while we were there, I'm looking for work, and I see this ad for business opportunity. These are terms that at the time I didn't know what they meant. And this guy sells me on this concept, this multi-level marketing. And that was like the tipping point after the entrepreneurial seed had been planted in my head. And so after that was probably a solid decade of just trying MLM after MLM. I sucked at it terribly. And never could make it work. I was in like 11 of them. But the point is this entrepreneurial concept had flourished in my brain. It was just MLM was the only way that I knew to do it, right? Like because other than that, like I wasn't going to go get a business loan and open up a brick and mortar store. I had terrible credit, so it was going to have to be MLM. And that was where I was at.
Multi-level marketing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And that was where I was at. That was my brain. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted something different for my family. And I didn't know how else to do it. And then at the same time, working the restaurant industry, it's kind of wearing me down because there's really no direction to go there other than if you want to be a manager. And then after that, it's like you trade
But being
pretty
on
much
that
your
front
life.
on that front line, you can get treated atrociously, can't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, but you grow thick skin. Really, it was the lifestyle. I was working nights, and I mean, it wasn't conducive to a healthy mind. And anyway, so I was done. So I spent like probably like I knew that I was decent at writing, and that was basically the only skill I could hold on to. So I spent about a year and a half just submitting resumes to freelance jobs. I got rejected by, well, all of them for a year and a half until a guy actually gave me a chance. And the reason that I kept getting rejected was because they wanted a college degree. And then one guy was like, "Oh, you have experience. Yeah, I don't care about your education. You have experience. You've actually done this before." And that's when I got a day job as a copywriter. So this is like the stars aligning, right? I got a day job as a copywriter, and then I'm working weekends still as a server, a waiter, and I know that I want to be an entrepreneur. Suddenly I see a video. I have no idea where it came from. Like, I don't even remember how I found it. I see a video from Ryan Moran talking about like this process is real simple. There's this thing called FBA, which at the time I had no idea that existed, where Amazon fulfills all of your stuff for you. They handle returns, they do the warehousing, all the hard stuff. So you don't actually have to have a physical location. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then he's like, so all you got to do is go to Alibaba, which I don't even remember how I had heard of Alibaba before. I just knew that was like a B2B site. All you got to do is go to Alibaba, you find a factory to actually make your own brand of product. And then you put it on Amazon. You don't have any competition because you're not listing these big brand products. You have your own products. You have your own listing. And if you're a good copywriter, you could make a lot of money. And that was the magic soup of words that he gave me. And I was like, oh my God, I just found my thing. And that was it. Like, literally at that exact moment, I decided this is what I'm going to do. I went and opened up 3 credit cards. I had never had credit cards before. Finally, at this point, I had repaired my credit enough to actually get some. So I got 3 and then maxed them out to bootstrap my business.
Sounds good. So talk me through, like, you've met Ryan Moran. Obviously, he's got a big standing in the industry. I think I spotted one of you. He was doing an ASM video. He's wearing a suit, hour-long presentation around 2015. And that was like, when I see that, I was like, wow, his presence on stage was really strong. And he was doing a series of YouTube, like, webinars that were posted to YouTube that I used to follow as well. So you know Ryan quite well. So you got involved in that crowd. There's a collective around Ryan and yourself and Zomblast, as it was back then. Talk to me about those early developments there. So you met Ryan, you decided to get into Amazon. What took me through the stages?
Well, the video that I saw was actually an affiliate. So back then, he hadn't fully transitioned into just Amazon stuff or just e-com in general. He was still doing a lot of affiliate stuff, and he was an affiliate for ASM. And that was his affiliate recruiting video. Basically, he put it out there. You sign up for this course, and you'll have direct access to me in my group called The Tribe. And at the time, I didn't know anything about ASM, and I actually didn't care. I just knew that if I didn't sign up for this course, I wouldn't have access to him anymore. And that was the only guy I knew that was my gateway into this industry. So I went ahead and used one of the credit cards to sign up for ASM, just so I could be in his tribe and be on those weekly calls with him and pick his brain about stuff. So I was one of his more active students during that particular tribe group. Asked a bunch of questions, jumped far ahead of like about a year or so later, like, all of my peers pretty much passed me up. But in those first few months, I zoomed past everybody. Everybody was still trying to figure out what products they wanted. I already knew what products I wanted, where they were going to come from, how to import them from China. I tried to be active in ASM. I was asking questions, but a lot of the mentors couldn't answer them for me, not to the degree that I needed them. So I just went out there and did it. I figured out this whole logistics thing. My very first shipment was actually a C shipment, which everybody was like, don't do that because you don't know enough. I was like, screw you. I'm going to read books and figure it out. And I did. And so I jumped ahead of everybody. I had inventory before almost everybody did. And then boom, applied my copywriting skills. Back then, that was actually all you needed. He wasn't kidding. Like, you write a really good listing and boom, I did a promotion and got rank. And then that combined with my listing, I was selling, 30,000 plus a month within, the first month. And then that went up. And so it was like really, really quick kind of success. I was kind of the example that Ryan liked to use. Like, this is, how we hope it works. Anyway, so within my first 6 months, doing pretty good. Ryan's girlfriend. So I'd only dealt with him in like these tribe meetings, but his girlfriend, who he had given some of his friends to consult. Like, basically, he had friends that were like, "Hey, I want to sell on Amazon," and Ryan's like, "Well, pretty busy guy, but here, maybe she can help you." Set her up. Well, she decided she didn't like to do that anymore. So he came to me and was like, "You should consider consulting." At this point, I'm like, I'm still working as a copywriter. I'm doing all this stuff at night, and I'm just like, I don't know enough about all this. Well, he finally convinced me, and then he negotiated so that's where we got a little closer, because I had to deal with him. Now he was actually negotiating my pay, transitioning these clients from his girlfriend at the time to me. And he brought me like 4 clients right out the gate, and their combined monthly income from them ended up being about 3 times what I was making as a copywriter. So as soon as I got confirmation of that last client, I went and quit my day job, but I was still a server on the weekends, because like I didn't know that all this stuff wasn't going to just, go away, like just fall apart. So anyway, so I was consulting for Ryan's friends. At this point, I wasn't as active in the tribe, but I had developed relationships of my own, like our little group from the tribe, which one of them was Joe Gianfola, who started Zonblast at at the suggestion of 2 other members of our little group. They told him, you're crazy to not charge for this. So he decided it was a good idea and actually started the company. I think he was in business on his own for about 2 months before it just grew so fast. He was like, I need help. And the first job that he needed help with was a copywriter. And at the time, I'd love to say that he was somehow impressed with the stuff I did on Amazon, but his success was far greater than mine whenever he finally got things rolling, because I think he jumped out the gate with like 3 brands at once. But he was like, you're the only person I know that's a copywriter. Do you want to come work for me? And I was like, I mean, sure. I was able to fit that into my schedule, especially with the move away from my day job. So that's when I got pulled into Zonblast about 2 months after it was created. And I was writing all the emails that went out by hand at that time. Obviously I helped scale that and systematize that. And that's history ever since.
So what year was that then? That's 2015, was it, when Zonblast started?
That was the tail end of 2014.
Oh, right, okay. Quite early.
November, the end of November, like literally the beginning of December 2014.
So it was just you and Joe at the very beginning, was it? You as the first employee?
That's right.
Yeah. So talk to me about how the early days, the growth, the first launches, how that was working. I mean, it's completely different today to what it was back then. Unverified reviews, you could have reviews coming in from people. It didn't really matter in terms of, you can say, I got this product for free in exchange for an honest review. Talk to me about the early days.
So in the very beginning, the reason why things grew so quickly was because it was really easy. Like literally blasts were only one day, because you didn't need to do any more than that. It was just a matter of picking the right amount of units. As long as you pretty much exceeded what the number 1, 2, or 3 guy on page 1 was doing, one time you would push up in rank about 4 days later. And then at that point, typically organic sales would roll in and you'd hang out there. Like it was that simple. You were able to get reviews because there was no such thing as verified and unverified. So all of these coupon sales, I mean, we're selling 50, 60, 70, 80 products, 80 units at between $1 and $5 a piece. And that coupon amount didn't matter. So all of the, like a huge chunk of these people would leave reviews. This is also before they could all opt out of your email messages. So we're sending people emails and they're still reading them. And we're getting like 50, 60, 70% review conversion because people were reading these emails. So it was like, it was literally like taking candy from a baby. Like it was just too easy. So because it was so easy, not only were we doing this for our own products, but we have this product, the Zon Blast, and people are just catching on. We never ran any advertising because we didn't have to. There was no Facebook ads. There was nothing like that because it wasn't necessary. Everybody that ranked told a friend who told a friend. And next thing you know, I mean, at our peak, I think, and this is before we were even a SaaS. This is when we were still writing emails by hand. We were signing up like 15, 20 people a day, and it was just nuts. And then I templated our emails. I was like, this is crazy. I can't write all these emails. We gotta template this. And then shortly thereafter, Joe realized that we needed to start offering some more versatile options, and that would require some coding. And so I can't even remember how long we were in business. I think almost a year before he was like, we need a software component to this. And then he brought in developers and they coded out and automated some of the processes. And that was around the time that some of our more unique URLs, particularly HeatSeeker, came out. And when that happened.
So explain HeatSeeker. So basically that's mimic search and buy, is it?
Basically. And when we were able to do that, because around a year and a half after we were in business, Amazon did start changing things. This was like, there was a big TOS change and then reviews changed. And so like things were starting to change. So that was the answer to that time period. So we come out with this SaaS, we have this proprietary URL, and then boom, we're, back on track again with 15 signups a day. And it's just like, it's dizzying. So the company grew really, really fast, and probably wasn't actually a good thing in retrospect to grow that fast, because we grew so fast we were not able to like slowly figure out how to move into more long-term products or services that could provide a more robust solution for our sellers, because we have this thing that was working so well and we had to keep up with it. Because that was the demand. That's what everybody wanted.
So you went from handwritten emails to get an MLP, like a minimal viable product in terms of some automation that helped you there. Mm-hmm. When did you bring the engineers in? Did you just bring one at a time doing piecemeal work, or are they in full time? How did that work?
We brought in, so I wasn't actually a part of that. Joe kept everybody pretty separate in the beginning. He brought in one full-time engineer, and it started with him. And then from there, he was like, I need help, and he built a team. And his team ended up being more his team, because Joe was very hands-off with that respect of it. Said, hey, you're doing a great job. I trust your judgment. Go get the help that you need. Just tell me how much I need to pay them. And that was basically how that worked out.
So what's that, end of 2015, the engineers start to come in?
I think probably somewhere around then, yes.
Yeah. So let's turn into 2016. What was happening there for you? Still growing the business?
Yeah. So around 2016, things all around started changing. For starters, for the software, we started seeing a lot more competition. Like I know we had a couple of competitors that started earlier on than that, but they took a little while to gain traction. But they did start to gain traction. We started seeing a lot of competition in the software space just to like start growing at that time. Meanwhile, my own personal products were feeling the hurt from increased competition. So it was a whirlwind, and then kind of reality set in. And it was like, okay, we're going to have to start dealing with this stuff. I had to figure out how I was going to deal with stuff individually. We had to start figuring out how to deal with stuff as a company. So it wasn't, the wave didn't remain up in the clouds forever, which was kind of unfortunate.
Well, you get that early run, don't you? And then, so you started to see Amazon started to change things. And then you've moved into softwares as well, haven't you? So you've got the SaaS end of the business, and so you're doing the launches. Talk me through some of the other developments as you were moving the growth of the company.
So I'd always had a vision for providing more solutions for e-commerce sellers in general, not just Amazon. I mean, I've been thinking probably since 2016 about how can we do something other than just this Amazon stuff. The problem is Amazon is basically like the golden handcuffs, right? Like you can't move away from it because that's where the money's at. I mean, you should move away from it. You absolutely positively should. And that's true for both SaaSes and sellers, but you can't because that's where the money's at. And that was kind of the problem that we were running into from the software side was I really wanted us to start developing other stuff, but there was always demand, right? As soon as terms of service changed or as soon as the algorithm changed, we had to do, multi-day promotions. We had to change up the way we handled reviews, because that changed, et cetera, and stuff like that just kept coming up. So it was like, okay, well, this is taking all of our attention. It probably shouldn't. And then we had an issue with our development team. Basically, it came to the point where we didn't see eye to eye with our development team at all. Our development team that started with one guy, and he now had a team, basically said, look, this isn't working. We had some disagreements and a split was inevitable. And that put us in a really tough situation. If you can imagine, you have a software company and then all of a sudden all of your developers are like, we're leaving next week. So it was like, scramble to figure out how we're going to fix this. And that is when we brought on a new team of developers is when we decided to rebrand, because at the same time we had a couple of major terms of service changes. And when you're in a launch business and the only thing you do is launches, terms of service changes really, really create, roller coaster doesn't even describe it.
Because the terms are so vague, aren't they? So then everyone goes, right, launches don't work no more, it's against terms of service. And then that creates a groundswell into the community. And sorry.
I don't necessarily, yes, a lot of them are worded vaguely. I don't necessarily think that they're so vague as people just don't know how to define the terms. Mm-hmm. Like they use certain words and you can actually ask Amazon what they mean. Yeah. But there's also a lot of people who are like, don't ask Amazon, seller support doesn't know anything. And it's like, okay, well, if you can't trust Amazon's answers, then where are you getting your information? But that's not, we could literally spend a whole hour ranting about that.
Yeah.
Point is yes, it scares people because Amazon does cultivate a culture of fear. Mm-hmm. And so we were hitting these roller coasters. And around the same time, we're switching development teams. At that point, we decided that because of many reasons, right? Zonblast was kind of a single thing. It was too intimately attached to Amazon. It was a synonym for running promotions. And to some people that might not even have had a positive connotation. So we decided to rebrand. So we basically rebuilt everything from the ground up, everything, including the architecture of the software, the branding. And we spent, I think, 9 or 10 months solid. All of us putting insane amount of hours in to do that. And then on the other side of it, we finally had something where we could start offering these other solutions. So aside from Zonblast, which then became just a product for launching, and aside from the tweaks and stuff we did there with URLs and multi-day, blah, 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 we had the platform to start doing stuff like, Facebook integration and code distribution and all the other stuff that, we've been working on. So that's actually not that. It's actually more recent. It's crazy how time goes by and you think this stuff happened a million years ago. But really, if you look at the timeline, we've only really been in a position to be able to start building this stuff out for the past year and a half. Things just happen so quickly and development can be slow at times. But yeah, that was that whole process. So it was kind of tumultuous.
So then you've done the rebuild and now you're moving, well, you're not moving, but you've gone from a service only to a SaaS. Mindset behind that, I mean, you speak to most people is that if you're looking to sell your business at some point in the future, it's going to be more attractive for buyers, potential buyers for scale is a SaaS business. And obviously
That's right.
the multiples are different to, say, a service-based business. So, and obviously the differentiation part as well is if you're just doing a launch, then what happens if they do change terms of service? So you're protecting yourself by diversification, right?
All of those things. Absolutely.
So what are the new services and why did you go into those services as well as part of the SaaS business that you offered?
Well, I mentioned Facebook integrations. So the new services after the launching were Bridge, which is the communication between Facebook and Amazon. And that was actually mostly because of me. I pushed for that really hard for a couple of reasons. At the time, I was really big on market research and kind of understanding your demographics. And that was before Facebook took away analytics for custom audiences. So it was beautiful. There was a period of time before Facebook started messing with everything, before the Cambridge Analytica stuff, where you could upload your customer data from Amazon, put it into Facebook, open Facebook Analytics, and actually analyze the demographics, like age range, where they live in the country, household size, income. Really, really awesome stuff. I mean, ridiculously awesome stuff. Unfortunately, Facebook took that away, but my whole thing, that was why I wanted Bridge. What it became after that was something really useful for people who wanted to use the customer information to create lookalike audiences so that Facebook was a little bit more intelligent when finding new people to run your ads to. And this is at a time when nobody was running Facebook ads, and we were trying to educate people on why to do that at the same time as what they could do with their data. Unfortunately, now things are always changing. Amazon's changing more and more, and a lot of those perks are probably going to go away just right around the time when finally everybody in the industry is embracing Facebook ads. It was like, it took you long enough. We've been trying to tell you this for over a year. Other than that, code distribution. The thing is promotions are just a part of running a brand on Amazon. Like, they just are. But not everybody wants to do a launch service, and that's completely understandable. They're worried about terms of service. They're worried about giving their data away. And honestly, a lot of people just don't like to give that much control over it. So the whole purpose and reason that we had built out what we call Code Courier was, okay, we have this mechanism now where you can run intelligent Facebook ads through Bridge. What are you going to do with those ads? Well, how about build your own list and run your own promotions? So Code Courier started as just a coupon distribution, and then it became coupon and URL distribution, and then we built out a mini chat template so that people could do that in their chat bots, and now it's really powerful. Like, there's so much cool stuff you can do, but the ultimate goal for that, honestly, it's crazy, but particularly with the additions that I've helped us make, the ultimate goal for that was really kind of to put Zonblast out of business. Like, I would rather have everybody completely like dedicated to the idea of building their own list and building their own brand asset. And I want you to use these tools that we've created, that I've contributed a tremendous amount to creating, so that you can do that, because 5 years from now, that's going to be way more beneficial to you than somebody else's launch list.
Cool. So what I want to do is switch away a little bit more, go back on to you personally. So can you tell me something about you that no one else knows about?
Something about me no one else knows about. I'm a pretty open guy, man. I don't know that there's anything that no one else knows about. I know that you know this and most people don't, that I am an ex-hip-hop dancer, and I still to this day love techno music, to the point where, honestly, if I'm playing music on my phone, if I'm at the gym or something, like the only thing I listen to is dance music, which people think that's really weird, but that's the truth. That's what I listen to. I am almost 40 and all I listen to is dance music. Yes. There, I said it.
Well, that was my old industry, but we'll get to Seller Sessions Live. We've got something lined up for you for a breakbeat thing later in that evening. So name a business book that has influenced your life.
Okay. I guess it is considered a business book, but I'm not really sure that it falls under the traditional definition of business book. But Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, was a total mind, like cognitive dissonance type of mind shift for me. So I definitely recommend that one.
Cool. And who's the biggest influence in your life and why?
Who is the biggest influence in my life? I've had the good fortune of building relationships with a lot of people who are awesome, and they have contributed in different little ways immensely to everything that I can call an accomplishment. But if we're talking about in terms of the biggest influence, I think if there's one person that's single-handedly more responsible for the motivation, the drive, the creativity, the everything that I have put into it, is probably my daughter, my oldest daughter, because she was the impetus for all of it. So, and then I learn a lot too, watching her kind of figure out the world. It reminds me to remain humble and realize that I don't actually know anything really. So yeah, she's a big influence on me. Cool.
Name me 3 important things that you do on a daily basis, like positive habits you have.
3 important things. So one of them is I listen to at least a chapter or more of an audiobook a day. I stop my day, whatever it is I'm doing, walk away from work, walk away from the family, go into the bedroom and listen to a couple chapters a day. So I think that's a really good habit to have. Another thing I do is there is an hour at which I will stop work and go and hang out with my youngest daughter. I think that's really important. Make time for family. And then a third thing that I do is I'm obsessed with writing to-do lists because they keep me organized. So I'm not necessarily saying you should have a to-do list, but you should have a thing that helps you stay on task. And I think that's a really good habit to have too.
Sounds good. Talk to me about how you invest in your health.
I am constantly, so I actually used to be a lot healthier than I am right now. Like big time. I was super Mr. Physique for a while. So I'm constantly aware of whether or not I'm achieving my health goals or I'm not. And when I'm not, I'm constantly like that awareness kind of brings balance into it. Since I've moved to Taiwan, I have allowed myself some indulgences that I normally wouldn't. We have a much more active social life here. So there are gluttonous nights over the weekends sometimes that involve lots of alcoholic beverages and food that I probably shouldn't indulge as much as I do, but I'm aware of it and then I try to fix it. So I'm constantly revamping my diet. That's really the biggest thing I do. Is I revamp my diet. I try to put in as many fruits and vegetables, raw foods, lean meats as possible in there, as often as I can.
You used to do a bit of biohacking and stuff back in the day as well, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, that was one of the branches of skill attainment that I went down.
Yeah. Can you talk about that or?
Yeah. So it's, I call them branches because we really do go off in like our own little worlds of interest, but they do overlap and they do all lead back to the same root. But there was a time when I was still desperate to figure out how I was going to make more money, and a guy came to me, saw an article or something I had written, and was like, "This is awesome. Do you want to write a book together?" And that got me down this path. And the book was called Get Limitless, and it was basically inspired by the movie Limitless.
Bradley Cooper.
Yes. So I started this. This was awesome because not only did it get me down this path of biohacking, but it also taught me how to do proper research, which has paid dividends since. Like actually know how to, it taught me a lot more about the scientific method and actually know how to do research. But as far as biohacking is concerned, it started out with just like studying like what kinds of things can you do to enhance your mental state? Who has done it before? So I started researching monks that were into, Kung Fu, Shaolin, like some of the weird stuff that you see on camera. Like how do they do that? So it started with studying meditation and then studying, diet and how that affects, then getting into the weird and started studying nootropics. And then from there, really weird, and started studying transcranial stimulation with electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where people were so interested in that. So I created a YouTube channel and would sit there and like make these little circuits and put these electrodes to my head and then play games and try to see if I couldn't affect my results based on a small amount of current running through my skull, which is probably the dumbest thing I could have ever done. But that was fun. And it did teach me a lot about, the whole concept of biohacking.
Yeah. I mean, nootropics, I think there's a big misconception out there, like something like you can buy L-theanine and caffeine combination for $12.99 on Amazon. But I think people see it as like heavy duty drugs, that people are using for enhancement. But there are, if you want mental acuity, you want verbal fluencies, mental recall and stuff, there are certain nootropics that work, more natural compounds and stuff like that. So I see some videos that you were talking about those kind of things, which are quite intriguing. But I don't know. I've never spoken about it before, but I reckon there's probably a culture in the Amazon world. It's fast paced and stuff. I'm sure there's a group of people out there who are cracking on with like Adderall and stuff like that, just to give them that mental performance and pushing their body hard to deliver on deliverables for their Amazon business, especially like your higher end 7 figures and your 8-figure sellers. But obviously people don't really talk about those kind of things.
They don't. And it's funny that that's the case because like now I'm thinking, man, if I had done that now, I would probably be bringing so many people out of their shell. Cause I can't tell you how many people are like mention it in passing in private. Like, oh yeah, you used to take this, I take this. And I'm like, how do you even know that exists? I didn't realize that was a thing, but it is. It really is.
Yeah. There's a lot of ban on nootropics in the EU. You can't get a lot of them here. So you have to order from locations in the US. But yeah, I mean, there's two sides of things. Like there's, as I said, the natural compounds that you can get that people have in terms of relaxing, or people have problems with recall, like I said, or verbal fluencies and stuff that they struggle with. So use it as an enhancement, but it's about that level of productivity or focus. But I think on the other end of it, because I think people see it as like there's these NZT pills, like from the limited form that doesn't really exist. It's not like that, is it? But you do have the other side, that is there are what do we call brain enhancers, if you like. But it does require for people to go in and do proper research and then take it upon themselves in terms of what they want to move forward with. So changing up the subject slightly here, talk to me about what is your biggest weakness?
My biggest weakness, probably self-talk. Probably the way that I talk to myself in my head.
Maybe undermine yourself by talking yourself out of things.
I suffer from severe lack of confidence just in business, though. Like it doesn't affect other parts of my life, right? Like I have a great relationship with my wife. As far as I can tell, I'm a pretty decent father, but in business, man, I second guess myself way too much. And the way that I talk to myself is just like, it can be unhealthy sometimes. And I think that's, that can have negative impact. So I think that's probably my biggest weakness right now.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, you're very well respected and liked in the community. People see you as a genuine, trustworthy person. So it's a bit odd that, you had those opposite effects. That's almost not self-sabotage, but everyone can have that voice in their head. I used to have it years ago with a voice in my head. Now it's the way I kind of explain it. I can't remember the name of the book, but I read a book. Is that you're in control of your destiny in your brain, right? So you could sit there and basically create an argument in your head. He said, she said, and when I see them, I'm going to say this, and none of that ever happens. So then what happens? You build this catalog in the background of all of these things that are going to stress you out that never actually happens. And it's not until you check yourself and go, hold on a minute, what are you doing? This is just nonsense. It hasn't happened. It will never happen. But you need to stop yourself from doing it because, you catch yourself in this array of noise that's going on in the back of your head. But then you can have a chuckle to yourself about it. So I didn't realize that existed until I read a book a few years ago on it. Because I think at heart, everyone has their self-doubts and all those kind of things. You wouldn't be human if you didn't. But there are means and ways of controlling those and realizing those thoughts are that. They are thoughts. It's not like they've actually happened yet. But I'm sure you've had it. You may have an argument with a business partner or your wife, and you have all this building up inside of you and what you're going to say, and they're going to say this. And then when you speak to them, you burst out laughing or nothing's said, and you're like, hold on. So I've just had that stressing me out for the last few days for absolutely no reason at all. But yeah, I can't remember the book, but there's some great books on that kind of thing, on that mental self-sabotage stuff,
Well, that's the unfortunate part about the stuff that goes on in your head, though, is your logical brain can look at it and go, yeah, well, what you're saying is totally right. Like, I totally get that's stupid. Yeah. But then your emotional brain is like, I'm going to fall for it.
Yeah, indeed. So tell me about your darkest hour just before dawn. The missed mortgage payments, let go staff, these kind of things.
Yeah. So there are actually two. There are two stark memories in my past that I go back to and keeps me grounded. Mm-hmm. One was when I was still living in Atlanta before I moved back to Alabama. I couldn't afford to pay the natural gas bill. So the stove didn't work and we didn't have hot water. Where we lived, it was warm. And I mean, I had space heater for if it was cold. So it wasn't that big a deal. But in order to bathe my daughter, I had to actually buy a little, a heating eye, like the one on your stovetop from a Walmart to plug into the wall. And pot by pot, I would boil water and throw it in the bathtub so that she could take a warm bath. And as soon as she was done, I would hop in. That wasn't a fun part of life. And then, of course, when I moved back to Alabama, I moved back in with my parents because that was things were going downhill. Right before the dawn, though, things got dark again. I was living in a trailer, and again, I couldn't afford the natural gas. There was a big tank in the back in the trailer park, and you're supposed to fill it with natural gas, and it was going to take a couple $100 that I didn't have. So we didn't have heat, and it was also a trailer, so it was like scary to plug in space heaters. So I slept in my daughter's bed to keep her warm at night during the winter. And I remember sitting there staring at the ceiling, telling myself like, you're going to have to do something. This can't keep going on. And that was probably a year before the clouds cleared up and I saw that video and started making a change for the positive.
Yeah. Tell me about your greatest comeback from adversity.
My greatest comeback from adversity. Well, that one might be that one might have to be retold later because I could have a better comeback. But I would definitely say that right after that, so within that year period that I just described, right when it was at its worst. So at that exact time, I had a job that I wasn't making any money at. We actually had to take government assistance. Not only did we have food stamps to buy food, but I got hurricane relief boxes donated so we could have some extra food in the trailer. So this was like a legitimately really, really low point and probably the lowest. And my bounce back from that was pretty epic. Like to go from that, I mean, literally we were eating tuna and those little cups of fruit from hurricane relief boxes every day for lunch. And then I figured out a way to make it better. Like I figured out a way to not only build up from that, but put a reserve away so that I could do something better, which led to my entrepreneurial endeavor. I managed to get out of debt that I had accrued. Like, I mean, I turned everything around. And that was only done from just sheer willpower and hard work, putting in extra hours, making the money wherever I could, and telling myself that I was going to make it through this. And I did. And, a year later, I was able to take advantage of my first opportunity to sell on Amazon. So even at that point, my life looked very different than it did in the trailer.
It's interesting because a lot of people that I've interviewed so far for In Depth talks about, very humble and poor beginnings and how they've had to grow to where they are today. And I think people don't often see the sacrifices made. They see they see above the water, not below the water. So yeah, no, congratulations for coming back from that. That's heavy duty stuff.
Thank you, sir.
In terms of what is the most common advice that you give to people, like everyday advice?
Every day? Well, I'm kind of a recluse. I don't really deal with anybody outside of this business world. But everyday advice that I give people here, like in this realm, in this topic, I guess it does apply to every day though. So I tell people to always test everything. And the reason is because when you test, and this is in anything, but it applies especially to things like running ads and writing listings and doing business in general. But the reason why you always test is because it doesn't matter if you're mediocre. Like, here's the thing, right? I wasn't born with special skills at all. I know people who are just prodigies at stuff, and I was never that guy. I didn't jump on, I didn't start my first job and then rise to the top. Like, I don't have any awards. Nothing ever came naturally to me. You can be mediocre at everything though. And if you test, you're always optimizing. So as long as you're always testing, you're always optimizing. It doesn't matter if you're mediocre, you can still be consistent. And I think consistency wins out over talent and, stuff like that any day. So that's the advice I give people.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. What advice should people ignore?
So I think anybody that's trying to sell you the idea that they have figured out the magic way to make everything easy, you should probably stay away from that. From any advice they give, more than likely that's questionable. Bold promises like that, when they say if it's too good to be true, it probably is. I mean, like, that's sage wisdom. So I would definitely stay away from, this magic bullet that I have to offer you will get it done.
Cool. So switching up the gears slightly, with what is your, as an Amazon seller or person in the space, service provider, etc., what's been your biggest win? It doesn't have to be financially, but what do you feel is your biggest accomplishment? Is it the books? We haven't even spoke about the books yet,
No, the books were good, but I don't know that was my biggest win. I think so far, to me anyway, my biggest win was, okay. It's hard to differentiate between biggest win and what I'm most proud of. So I'm most proud of the stuff that we put together, that I helped build with Bridge and Six Leaf, but I don't know that that was the biggest win. Probably the biggest recent win was when I formulated the slingshot method. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what that is, like, this isn't a pitch session. I created a system for our company that added like 20 grand monthly revenue almost overnight. So that was a big win. And I know you didn't have to be financial, but that was good. That was good. So I'm proud of that one too.
Cool. And where do you see yourself or your businesses as a seller or as a business in the next 2 years?
In the next 2 years?
2 to 5.
So I ideally I will have reduced my dependence on Amazon dramatically. I don't even care if I've reduced it to the point where I'm not even dependent on Amazon at all. Amazon, to me, while it's an effective channel, is a headache, and I would absolutely love to build my own asset. So I'd really like to shift my focus more on my own website, Shopify. That's where a lot of my attention's been. So ideally, in the next 2 to 5 years, that'll be fleshed out and profitable a lot more so than it is now. And I'll be honest with you, my relationship with Amazon is so tumultuous. Like, I would trade a $20,000-$30,000 a month account on Amazon for like 7-8 grand on Shopify any day at this point, just because of the hassle. Yeah. So I want to own it. So that I see that in my personal business. As far as the other stuff that I do and that we do and that I help do, I think we're going to see a lot more of a focus on, at least from me, messenger marketing on Facebook Messenger, because I think that's the future and it's the single best platform for like real person to person psychological type marketing. So that's what I see.
Cool. Outside friends and partners, who do you rate in our community for putting the work in, and why?
Well, obviously you, Danny.
No. Don't. We're friends. We're separate. Who do you rate in? Who do you? Yeah. So I don't fall into that category. Who do you rate in the community? Like, third party, you look at them, you admire what they do and the work that they put in.
Gosh, I mean, there's a few people out there that I would have to say. Here's the thing: they might not be my friends yet, but I'm working on that. So soon enough, all these people are going to be my friends.
Yeah,
I definitely want to give props to Lee Ran. Mm-hmm. I know he's a friend of yours, but like, legit, I think the longest conversation I ever had with him was the time that you had us on that last seller sessions. Outside of that, we've never actually spoken individually. So so I think he counts as somebody that I can put on the list. He's earned my respect, just the way that he composes himself and he handles his audience. And I think the information that he gives is really good. And I know this is going to seem weird because technically we're competitors, but I want to give props to Casey Goss because he's got a hell of a brain on him, and he's putting it to good use over there with his company. So I definitely admire him and the stuff that he does. And then, so if you hadn't have put me on the spot with that, I would have had a nice prepared list. But those are the first two that pop up. I think we should just.
That's cool. I mean, I've done an in-depth with Casey, and he said about Lebrand too. And I think it's quite nice is that being that you and Casey are in a competitive markets, that you can get on, and do you know what I mean? You can operate. It's not like they're over there, so we must despise them. Do you know what I mean? You're giving props to your competitor. So while we're on the subject, we might have a quick chat about this. You're going to be at Seller Sessions Live. We've got Casey there. We're going to have Lebrand there also, and Evelyn Demirov who will be there, and Paul Harvey. What are you going to be covering for us?
Well, I plan to talk a little bit about that messenger marketing. It'll more psychological stuff, which I guess technically could be considered copywriting, but. Yeah.
There's an array of stuff though in there that you're covering though, aren't you? You're covering like funnels, you're talking about bot flows, you're talking about psychology, you're talking about influence, those kind of things to help with conversions. You're talking about testing. So you're kind of not undervaluing what you're saying, but like there's quite a density of stuff that you're covering that helps with the makeup that if you're on and off Amazon. So one of the other things I want to mention as well is that we kind of touched on this earlier on about networking. I find it super, super important. Most people I do. And you've been learning that mechanism. How has networking helped you in the last 2 or 3 years?
I mean, this is a prime example, Danny. Networking has created our relationship where I get tons of exposure because you put me on this microphone all the time. Yeah. Like that right there is, I guess, the simplest and easiest illustration to point to. It's been phenomenally profound. And it's all because my definition shifted. Once upon a time when I was being taught multi-level marketing, I basically was taught that networking is all about meeting people that you could leverage in some way to your advantage. And that never sat well with me. So I never did it.
Totally wrong approach.
Yeah. But later, I since have learned that networking is just relationships. Like you're building relationships. And yes, those can be strategic at times, but they're also, genuine friendships that grow out of that. And friends, what they do is, if they can lend a helping hand, they do. If they need some help, they ask for it. And that's what's happened. So it's been a huge game changer since I shifted that focus. Not only do I actually have friends, I mean, literally, Danny, this is the coolest thing ever, right? I call myself reclusive because I pretty much am, and I'm an introvert, but because of networking in this industry, like I have digital friends, online friends that I talk to daily, like daily. There are people that hit me up just to ask how I'm doing, or that I'll hit up to ask how they're doing. And it's like, that's kind of incredible. Like to actually have people that want to talk to me every day is pretty amazing. So on a personal level, it's been a game changer. And then of course, professionally, my voice is being heard by a lot more people. I don't know how many, whoever finds that is a good thing, I guess is good. I don't know how many people do though.
Well, look, I have you on the show, like with everyone else in the audience knows, like for me, it's about content is king and queen. Yeah. So regardless of whatever it is, does the person provide great content? And you do. You're very knowledgeable. You're very open with what you share. It's the same with Lebrand, the same with Michael Hartman, all these different people who come on the show. Because that's what it's about. You don't get people on the show because they are a superstar for some reason other than these guys share content. They pay it forward. So that was the other thing we're going to talk about. You do a lot of paying it forward. Lebrand does a lot of paying it forward. And I respect that. And I see massive growth for me as a person and in business with paying it forward. What's your take on it?
For me, I think paying it forward is a good way to put it. For me though, it's, I don't even know that it's paying anything. It's just like, I love this conversation. Like I love to talk about this. I love to share what I know. And so I don't have a problem with doing it. And on top of that, I really do want to be helpful. It's not like a personal mission for me to go out there and change everybody's life. I mean, I'd love to, I want to, I think that's a wonderful thing. But, I also don't have a complex where I feel like I'm a superhero, like I'm a normal dude. But if I can help, that's fantastic. You know, and with that mentality, people ask me questions all the time in private. I try to answer all of them. Like I really do, because, you know, if nothing else, I just don't want to be a jerk.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's end it on here then. So complete the sentence. Amazon is.
Shite? No. Great opportunity for some people, I guess.
Excellent. That was your in-depth. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. What's the best way that people can reach you?
Well, really, Facebook. Message me on Facebook. Like, seriously, you can go to my page, Unofficial Anthony Lee. I never changed it. That was like how it ended up coming out on Facebook, and it just never changed. Or if you find me another way, I'm in all the groups. I have email addresses too, but I really don't like checking. Just get me on Facebook. Seriously.
Sounds good. Guys, thank you for joining us. Anthony, thanks for joining us. Just to let you know, we're sold out of tickets for early birds at Seller Sessions Live June 1st. There's still some general mission tickets remaining. Go to sellersessions.com/live. I'll see you again in the next few days. Take care.